Okay, this is the last part of Module 6, and that will finish up our online video stuff for this semester. And I just wanted to remind you that your assignments are due this Sunday coming, and please make sure you do a good job of those. They're report format, and they need to be include all the elements that are listed in the assignment information. All right, so there's 3 sections to go on this. The spectators' excitement and globalisation, so as we move sports into a global marketplace. Then there's a section on junior sport, and then a section on drugs in sport, which I'm sure you're well informed about, but we're going to touch on it anyway as we go through. So let's get going. One of the things that you've needed to do in your assignment is create spectator interest. If you don't have people that are interested in coming along and watching your sport, or at least participating, then you basically don't have anything that's going to sort of give you a longevity in the marketplace. So the creation of spectator and participant interest is based upon some cultural norms. For some things, of course, we like the excitement and entertainment. Super Bowl was on yesterday. I was down in a bar in Breckenridge watching the Super Bowl, and the place was packed, you know, and there was a great deal of excitement, and of course the halftime entertainment with Justin Timberlake. So these are things that get large numbers of people globally watching into these events. We also have an emphasis on material success, or at least the appearance of success. And when you've got a sport, we seem to always want to have a winner, if that's at all possible, and that's very much a part of it. And then we have our personal experience with the sport. So in our participation, and as you get to my age, we're living past glories, whether they be many or small number, but it's an important part. And when I look at the people who I'm closest to, you know, in terms of my friends, they're generally the long-term friends, the ones from school and other places, are the guys that I played football and cricket and tennis with. And today, my closest friends are the people I probably play golf with and ski with. So it is one of those things that, you know, we do things with people who have the same interests as us, and sport's very much a part of that. And hopefully, you know, for all of us, we can continue to participate in some way or another for a long period of time. And of course, today, with many of the sports, the professional sports, very easy access for sport via media, and in fact, even individual television channels that are devoted to individual teams like Manchester United or Arsenal. Okay, so the quest for excitement. Social life is highly controlled, organised and regulated today. And so everyday routines dictate our lives. They're a little bit boring. We've got to go to work. We've got to do all those things that we have to do to mow the lawn and do all those things to maintain our home and everything else. Sometimes we get emotionally stale, stuck in a rut, whereas sports allows us either as a participant or as a spectator to get out of that you know, boredom environment and to briefly break out of the ordinary and allow for emotional arousal, exciting behaviour and controlled conflict, if you like. And you know, some sports are physically demanding in terms of body contact, others are not. Success ideology and spectator interest. Spectator involvement is higher amongst those who believe that success is attained from hard work, and that hard work always leads to success. And sport events capitalise on this ideology and reinforce it today. And this is something that's going to be important for you as you go through that. You know, the hard work will hopefully lead to success. Doesn't always, because there's oftentimes a faster gun in the West, but the fact is that if we work hard, we're more likely to have that success. There's no doubt about that. And so sport reinforces this, very important. And the media and corporate interests also reinforce the ideology for their own purposes, sell more newspapers to get more people to tune into their television stations and watch their ads. In terms of youth programs, interest is often created and nurtured in childhood activities and participation. As we've mentioned before in some of the other videos, the Auskick program through AFL is one of the most successful junior sports programs in this country. Not only does it involve the kids, both male and female, but it also involves the parents who may not have been involved in that sport when they were younger, but now have an interest because their children are interested, and that brings additional merchandise sales, ticket sales, and everything for the professional levels of the game. Organised youth programs are often publicised and made available to a wide audience. Having had a son that went to college in the US, you know, college sport is huge over here. You know, the college basketball, football games are televised. The later sessions of the baseball, college baseball series are televised. And so, it's the way it is. To give you an idea, when my son was playing the Junior College World Series in Grand Junction, Colorado, 2 years in a row, they made the World Series, only 12 teams from the country, 12,000 spectators at the games, at Junior College World Series. Quite amazing in terms of that. Spectator interest, of course, derived from associated family and friends, past performers, glory days, and current performers watching, really skilled people do the things that they do. And of course, the media coverage provides needed publicity and creates and sustains spectator interest among a large number of people. And the visual electronic media, TV and the internet, especially good at recruiting new spectators because they build the excitement and everything else, and you don't need a ticket, you can get access to it at all times. Some of the economic motives for growing the sport, obviously, large-scale and hallmark sports events have become global in their outlook and scope. And as we've mentioned, Australian Open Tennis just recently on, that has a global sort of following. For those who control, own, sponsor and promote sports events are looking for new ways to expand their markets and maximise their profits. 1% of Australia's population, approximately 250,000 people. 1% of the global population is 67 million. So if you can turn your sport into a global sport, you will have, potential of huge incomes and interest in that sport. In terms of global sporting and event markets, expansion in an effort to tap into larger profits that the global marketplace offers. You could argue that perhaps there's too many golf tournaments and too many tennis tournaments these days, and the cricketers complain that there's too much cricket for them to play. However, maintaining skill sets across those things has become very important for the players and the competitors. And of course, it generates interest with sponsorship and television and everything else, which is important. Some of the exporters of cultures, we're talking in different sports, of playing sports out of country and trying to generate interest in those other countries. Use of dream teams in the Olympics to bring sport brand awareness to a wider audience. Since '92, when the NBA permitted the basketball dream team to compete at the Olympics, NBA finals are now broadcast to over 100 countries around the world. And of course, you have many international players, including some of our Australian players, playing in the NBA. So that generates interest within our local market as well. Same with the soccer. And, we have people like, over the years, Harry Kewell and Mark Viduka, and these people have been highly successful in playing overseas, and that generates more interest in the country where they come from. And the Olympic Games, the most successful and financially lucrative media sports event in human history, and I can't imagine that changing. Winter Olympics starting tomorrow, and there will be global sort of television of all those events. And hopefully this year Australia does well. We've got certainly some world-class competitors in many of the events. In terms of corporate use of sporting events, it's a way of expansion, if you like, can be used to capture the attention and emotions of a global audience. And so, corporate sponsorship of these things is important. Corporations need symbols of success, excellence, productivity, happiness, inclusion and belonging that they can use then to identify their organisational product with. And obviously the sports-related products like Nike and Under Armour and Adidas and these people, fair enough, but also other organisations who want to be associated with success or profile in the marketplace, very much a part of that. Marketing handles, creation of public goodwill or emotional identification of a product with a sport or the emotions that went along with that particular sporting event. And, sport's not just for spectators, but they are PR and marketing tools. And so therefore, we should take advantage of those if we're in the corporate marketplace. And in the same way, the sport takes advantage of the income that comes from that sponsorship and interest. Of the 100 largest companies in the world, 51 of those are transnational companies, so companies that are around the world. And General Motors has an economy greater than 80% of the world's nations, and that was in 2000. But the fact is that some of these large companies are enormous, and they want to be associated with global sporting activities. And if you look at the world's 50 largest economic entities, it's not long before you get into General Motors, Walmart, ExxonMobil, Ford Motor Company, and then you've got countries coming back in like Poland and Norway and Indonesia, and then Mitsui, Mitsubishi, Toyota, General Electric, and these companies are substantial. And of course, this was from probably 2000. you now have companies like Apple and Samsung in there in a big way. There's no doubt about that. In terms of branding sporting events, corporations and government brand sport events, naming of stadiums, of course, other venues and events is at a peak. And normally those contracts run for 3 or 5 years. Oftentimes, sponsors support a particular event for ongoing years, and the Olympic Games is a good example of that. McDonald's and Coca-Cola being long-term sponsors, and they get first offer, if you like, but they pay a very, very large sum to be involved in those sports. Flat surfaces within venues without a paid advertising message is considered wasted space. So if you can put things on fences, you can put them all over the place. It's just like catching a bus or a tram or a train. There's lots of advertising that goes on inside those vehicles and also outside. Uniforms and equipment endorse sponsors. You have sleeve sponsors, short sponsors, and all sorts of things that allow more and more money to come into the sport organisation. Sports are for sale, and the expectation they will be sold to the highest bidder. Now, in some cases, of course, companies like to maintain their commitment to a particular team, and they will try and lock that in for as long a period as they can. But as things go on, brand placement will increase, obviously. And in terms of commercialisation, when a sport is converted into commercial entertainment, its success depends on a couple of things that we as patrons or spectators want. We want that appeal usually rates the uncertainty of an outcome. So, win or loser, that sort of thing. What happens at the end of the entertainment, a risk reward, gambling or final placements. Hopefully, we might see a reduction in some of the gambling advertising that goes on with our sports. But certainly, trying to get your team into the finals and then into the grand final and then be the grand final winner is a very big part of that. And heightened physical or emotional stresses or appearance of stresses that are apparent. And a display of excellence is one of the things that we go to see professional sports people do, is because they are so good at what they do and want to see their skill sets. And if we've got things that deliver all of these things, uncertainty, risk reward, display of excellence, and curiosity, then we get great support from our spectators, and they will continue to come. Next thing, of course, is the structure and the goals of sport events. Once we commercialise and once we are charging prices for people to come to our events, they're generally there to generate a profit, and that's an important part of it. We have to make sure that our rules and regulations and our play times and everything fit in with corporate objectives. And major sports events structurally incorporate more merchandising opportunities. And so as the sport grows and the teams grow in presence in the media and everything else, the opportunities for further sponsorship and merchandising sales grows and grows. They describe them as social constructions and therefore change in connection with social relationships. But we form a relationship with the teams that we support. And sometimes that relationship is complete dedication. We go to every game. We travel with the team. Where the team goes, we go. Other people, it's just a matter of, following them on television and other things. But we do form these relationships in terms of our commitment to the teams that we follow. The orientation of the performers. Hallmark or major sporting events require mass audiences. Attracting mass audiences is quite difficult. It results in gathering many people who lack technical expertise in the sport. And without the technical knowledge, hype and drama become the primary sources of entertainment. It's why goal scorers are more popular than defenders, I guess. Batsmen are more popular than bowlers if they're successful. It's very difficult, skip there through. Very difficult for bowlers to attract as much attention generally. Now, we could say, well, that's not necessarily the case. And you look at Shane Warne or some of these other, world-class bowlers. However, there are many more people who follow, successful batsmen than successful bowlers, I guess. And the major sports events therefore become an entertainment, and all of the people that are involved, the players, the officials, and everything else, become performers in that entertainment. For organisations that control sport, we talked about this a little bit earlier in some of the other videos. Control and ownership of sport is increasingly vested in large corporations, sometimes government, but generally large corporations, away from the participants and communities that may have originally developed them. And because there's a requirement for funds, private owners and governments are increasingly profit-oriented, and this is reflected in sports goals and policies. I have a lot of teams that are now privately owned in rugby league, and that will continue as the sport needs money, and that's the way it works. All right, junior sport. Most of you have, or all of you, I imagine, have come through a whole lot of junior sports programs, including obviously of AFL, but also maybe tennis programs and cricket programs and other things and other sports that you might have been involved in. Junior sport, at the end of the day, should be fun. One of the things that we should make sure about is that people are enjoying it. It's connected to friends and family, emphasis on involvement rather than winning, particularly at very young ages. It's not important to keep the score. It's important that people learn skills. They also should be safe physical environment, safe social environment, away from alcohol and drug use, child protection and harassment. We ensure that all of our coaches and managers are, filling the child protection information and everything else. And it should be a safe cultural environment where there's no issues of racial or national, linguistic or disabled limitations up to a point. We don't want people who are disabled being injured, but we want them to be incorporated. Junior sport should be fair and should belong to the juniors, and it's a very important part of it. Some of the development stakeholders, obviously the parents, the teachers at school, the coaches, play an extremely important role in junior sport, as they're responsible for providing young people with the best possible education experience from their sports participation. And things that we push at university now about teamwork and leadership, and these come in many cases from our experiences with sport, and they become a very important part of it. And then, of course, once we get a bit past that and we've got organised sports, we look at venue staff providing, environments where facilities are there, there's canteens and other things that are there for everybody to enjoy. What motivates children to play sport? Well, a lot of things really. I guess ego, pride, fear of failure, challenge of competition, determination to succeed, feeling of achievement for perfecting a skill, acknowledgement from other players, coaches and family. But I can tell you that, my view is on this, that the teamwork issues that we develop over the times that we play sport are critical for you later on in life. Learning to work in a team is a critical part of, your contribution of whatever it is. In a business environment, you may come from an accounting or a sales or a manufacturing background. Those people all come together to make a business work. And not being able to work in a team environment is a very difficult thing. In terms of motivation, making an effort to motivate and encourage young people in sport has numerous advantages. Obviously, the skills, self-esteem and confidence develops. They'll remain involved in sport rather than dropping out, and that's a very important part of it. They'll want to attend training because that's often as pleasurable as the games themselves. And it should be fun and enjoyable, and ultimately results in greater attendance at your venue if you've got young people coming through into this way things work. Some ways to recognise and motivate young people: recognise their achievements, all achievements. Obviously, we've got people who have different skill sets, and some are more skilled than others, but we recognise the efforts that people put in at whatever level they are. Set goals, provide opportunities for all to experience success by setting short and long-term goal setting. Can have a positive effect on both motivation and skill development. You at an elite level will be doing beat tests and things to increase your skill and your fitness level. These are things that we set goals, and then that gives us the motivation to go on and become successful and to increase our confidence in the things that we need to do. Provides leadership opportunities. We need to be consistent and enthusiastic about what we're doing. Provide challenges. It's not enough for us to just say, just go and play, don't worry about the result. In the end, as we get older and we are in a competitive environment, we do need to understand the value of winning and why that's important. We also need to be a good sport when we lose and understand that when the final whistle goes or the match is over, we should shake hands with our opponents and move on, because at the end of the day, it is still a sport. How do we go about this? Well, we can vary the practice programs. Obviously, got to be organised. You can make practice fun. And, we talk here about punishment. We shouldn't, in junior sport, we shouldn't have any punishment apart from suspension of play for people who don't understand the process of competing in a proper way. Now, this is something that I have had to deal with, is ugly parents and ugly spectators. Ugly parent syndrome is simply parents behaving poorly or in an unacceptable manner whilst attending junior sporting events. Includes belittling other players, abusing them, threatening them, and has resulted in the death of a spectator. In the United States, a parent was convicted of murdering another spectator as a result of an incident at a junior ice hockey practice match. I mean, realistically, we don't want to get those sorts of things. But the people that are affected by this are the children themselves, coaches, referees, and other spectators and participants. And, in the end, if it gets really bad, people just won't want to play. So the never list for parents, staff and coaches. Never put the child's effort down. Playing well is not the same as trying hard. They are learning their sport. Appreciate the skills, confidence and game savvy develop over a period of time. Never blame the umpire and slam their decisions. There's always a complex combination of events that make for a dubious decision. Rarely is one person to blame. And never ignore the safety aspect. Don't encourage tactics that could lead them to injure others or themselves. And never swear or abuse even in the heat of the moment. Children are always listening and watching. Be conscious of the role you play in the child's development. We have a duty of care as a coach or a manager or a parent to make sure that the environment that these children are playing in is appropriate. Some of the sociological and philosophical issues: increased privatisation and commercialisation of sport has resulted in an increase in the performance ethic of junior sport, and private sport and pay for players taken over as the principal method of junior sport delivery as opposed to school and public provided sport. And how young is too young? Olympics, youngest competitor was 10 years old. The youngest gold medal winner was 13. What sport? Gymnastics. And so, we can have young competitors at certain environments. But generally, we like to see team sports work through during the school age times, individual skills building up, and, that is probably a better thing. One of the reasons why we want team sports at school level is because it is increasing that teamwork mentality. Very important. Okay, last topic, drugs and sport. Statement by Olympic insiders claim that it is rare for anyone to win gold medals without taking performance-enhancing substances. I don't necessarily agree with that. In the US survey, Olympic athletes were asked if they'd take illegal drugs, provided winning was guaranteed and they'd get away with it. 99% said yes to cheating. And if the drug gave them 5 years at the top and then killed them, half that said they'd still take it, which is pretty scary when you think about it. Why do they cheat and take drugs? Because of the success, because of the huge amounts of money available now in sport for personal success. Oftentimes peer pressure to maintain your success. You often, in some sports, have a very short career lifespan, so people want to try and maintain that as long as possible to gain advantage. And of course, there is a level of fame that goes along with success. There's no doubt about that. How can we improve our performance? Well, obviously you can take drugs, and that's not what we want to do, but then we can do training, advanced physical and psychological training and preparation, better equipment, advanced technology, super suits for running and swimming, carbon fibre and other lightweight materials, better design. As I mentioned in the previous video, the Chinese Olympics in Beijing in 2008 was many of the swimming records were as a result of the swimming suits, and they've now been banned, and that's probably a good thing. The other methods, of course, physical activities designed to improve performance that are not training, spitting to reduce weight, blood packing, hyperbaric chambers and things, not illegal. I'm in Colorado at the moment where we're staying is at 10,200 feet above sea level. During the summer, many people, particularly cyclists, come up to these areas to train at high altitude, and that increases their aerobic capacity through their blood, and then they go back and compete at sea level. Nothing wrong with that, but certainly it is an advantage that not all participants can afford or can participate in. In terms of selection, selecting only those best suited to a particular sport due to their psychologically or morphologically things. Australian gymnasts recruited to be trained for the Winter Olympic teams in terms of the aerials, and we've had, with Lydia and others, we've had great success in those areas over the years. In rowing, for instance, they do the geometry of your body and work out whether you'll be a good rower based on the length of your legs and your arms and torso. these are starting to sort of be introduced at very young ages in terms of different sports. Drug and substance use in sports has had a long history, become commonplace to the point where reports in the media of athletes being caught are no longer shocking anyone. And the use of performance-enhancing substances is argued to occur regularly in high-performance sport. Use is arguably filtering down to junior sports as well, and such substances were used as long as athletes believe they will enhance performance. Historically, athletes have taken a wide variety of everyday and exotic substances over the years, and substance use is not just limited to elite athletes. Often people at other levels are doing this. While the lure of financial gain is perceived by many as a motivator for athletes to take drugs, it's been identified that athletes throughout history have taken drugs for no financial gain. In 300 BC, the Greeks ate substance to improve athletic performance, including hallucinogenic mushrooms, sesame seeds, and animal protein. 1890, strychnine and wine was used in sports. Not such a bad thing. 35, testosterone was synthesized. 1960s, amphetamines used in cycling, causing death of several cyclists. 70s, systematic drug program by the German Democratic Republic, East Germany. Many athletes given drugs without knowledge or consent. Blood doping with reinfusion, and basically, performing at or training at very high levels, high altitude, and all that sort of thing. Giving your blood, having it kept, and then reintroducing it just before events, highly oxygenated blood. Note, LA Olympics, many athletes tested positive for anabolic steroids. Some 9 positives disappeared from the laboratory. And the 90s and beyond, EPO, HGH, human growth hormone, and beta blockers slow down the heart rate, although steroids remain prevalent. As a form of defiance, using drugs in society as well as drugs in sports is a form of defiance, a shift from the societal and sporting norm. It is cheating. And as in society, we've created ideals around which athletes must conform, and those who do not are regarded as displaying deviant behaviour. The use of performance-enhancing substances is said to be a deviant overconformity in sport. We must consider performance-enhancing versus recreational drugs. This is, a completely different environment now, which is coming into a lot of the sports. Elite versus recreational sport, adult versus adolescent and minor use, and sport by sport, including subcultural context. These different cases and populations may present the need for different sorts of arguments. Do surfing contests test for marijuana, for instance? There's no universals in ethics around this. It's a complex area and is I guess you would call it still a growing area. So if you're going to define and ban performance-enhancing substances, you've got to define which ones are able to include, different things. They can include aspirin to heroin or steroids to human growth hormone, maybe legal or illegal products, harmless or dangerous, people taking huge amounts of caffeine, for instance, perfectly legal product for us to drink coffee, and there's caffeine in chocolate and all sorts of other things. But large amounts of it can enhance an athlete's performance in certain things, such as fencing and other things like that. Is the product harmless or dangerous? Is it natural or synthetic? Socially acceptable or unacceptable? Or is it commonly used or exotic? And then what about blood doping, IV drips, hyperbaric chambers, and local anaesthetic? In other words, painkillers for injury. Some problems, of course. What are foreign substances of the body? Why are foreign substances such as aspirin and ibuprofen not banned? Why is the natural hormone testosterone banned? What is the abnormal quantity and abnormal route of entry? Is it a tablet or is it something that we've got to lie down and have syringed into ourselves? Why are mega doses of vitamins allowed? And why can athletes be stripped of medals for taking medications without intending to improve performance? Other athletes can be legally rehydrated using IV drips. And it's, as I said, a complex area that is still ongoing. Why do many athletes see the use of drugs as a noble act of commitment and dedication, whereas many spectators see it as a reprehensible act of deviance, yet pay big money to watch athletes do superhuman things requiring extreme training regimes and strategies made possible by drugs? What is artificial, foreign, fair, normal, abnormal, right, wrong, moral, ethical regarding drugs and sport? And as I said, it's a complex area that is still developing. My advice to you, as elite athletes, is that you make sure that you follow the rules, because the penalties and the impact on your career can be substantial. Do we make all drugs illegal? Is that fair? If a 50-year-old man takes 8 years to remain on the job on a construction site, why can't his 25-year-old professional football son do the same if he's injured? And that's a complex ethical question. Drug testing arguments. Performance enhancing substances allow athletes to go beyond their natural abilities. Gives people who use them unfair advantage. Drug use threatens the health and well-being of athletes, and this is a problem. Undermines the purity of athletics and sports. Arguments against drug trading, obviously the moral ones, gives people an advantage, undermines the true spirit of sport, reflects badly on others, and the legal reasons are it's against the law of the land, it's against the law of sports. For health reasons, can be addictive, can lower your life expectancy, can cause death, can lead to liver disorders and heart disease, can suppress growth, can cause sexual and gynecological problems, and can affect moods and behaviour, causing aggression and depression. So as role models, if it gives a bad example to others, especially young people who copy their heroes and put their lives at risk, it gives a bad image to sport and lowers its status. And what's being done? Well, a lot really. Stricter, more rigorous and out-of-season testing, stricter surveillance, stricter punishments and life bans now for some, coordinated education programs for athletes and coaches which highlight the health and moral issues surrounding sports and drugs, more money for increasingly efficient and effective testing programs, unified policies about the issue, and role models to enforce their no drugs position. The solutions: critically examine the hypocrisy in elite sports, establish rules indicating that risks to health are undesirable and unnecessary in sport, establish rules stating that injured athletes must be independently certified as well before they play, and educate definitions of courage and discipline that promote health. And, I think the role model thing is a very important part of it. Make drug education part of health education, create our norms regarding, use of technology, critically examine values and norms in sport, teach athletes to think critically, and that's what's happening with you guys, and provide accurate and current information. As for anti-drug testing, drug testing is hopeless, unjust, or a failure. Cat and mouse game is ridiculous. Genetic engineering may not be really testable. An invasion of privacy, especially in case of recreational drugs. People in power have no right to police our private lives, and different policies between different sports. And that is an issue, that people who are allowed to take certain things in some sports are penalised in other sports. There is harm though. Drug use harms the user and therefore should be banned. Not all drug use causes harm, therefore must be applied on a case-by-case basis. In terms of paternalism, should a competent adult be denied their own free will and choice? And if we ban substances that are harmful, why don't we ban sports that are harmful? Motor racing, boxing, NRL and other contact sports, sailing, methods that are harmful. In terms of harm to athletes, the premise using drugs other than clean athletes should be banned. Clean athletes are harmed because dopers up the ante and push them to, past their level of normal competition. Does the potential coercion of clean athletes outweigh the actual violation of the other athletes' personal liberties? And elite athletes always play a high stakes game and must dedicate significant portions of their life to their sporting pursuit. How is upping the ante by using drugs different to any other rigorous training and dietary regime? And the idea that drug use is worse than longer and even more specialised and mechanised training just begs the question, why is that so? There is harm to society. The premise, drug taking harms society, especially children who see athletes as role models. And we must ask why does drug taking specifically disqualify athletes from being role models? Musicians and actors take drugs and are still considered role models. Now that is actually the end of our program for this semester. Please do a good job on your final assignments. They will be assessed after this weekend. You need to get them in on time unless you've got a disruption to studies due to health or other reasons. I wish you all well, and perhaps catch up with you on other programs during the course of the year. I'm going to go out and have a ski, and it's a bit of powder this morning, so it should be quite a nice time on the mountain. I wish you all well, and we'll talk soon.